When you're a leader, it can be really frustrating when your team is executing on the tasks at hand, but aren't taking the initiative. Instead, they're waiting for you to tell them what to do. When this happens, it can feel like the world is on your shoulders and you are in the middle of everything. This often turns into putting out fires constantly and limits your time for strategic work, the work that you actually want to do. I had a challenge like this when I was managing a team. I had a content creator on my team who was underperforming. Specifically, she was delivering the bare minimum to the task at hand and wasn't operating at the strategic level that her position was scoped for. In addition, she was a direct report that I had inherited who had recently had her first child. And through that first really difficult year as a parent, was working for another manager who just had little or no empathy for that demanding first year. Instead, her past manager spent time barking orders while complaining about her behind her back. I know this because her prior manager was my previous manager too. To say that she was demotivated and checked out when I inherited her was an understatement. I had my work cut out for me. At the time, I was a new manager and things were moving really fast at our rapidly growing startup. Anyone who has worked for a startup knows you wear lots of hats, and every day, every moment, it feels like your to do list gets longer. Everyone was drinking out of the water hose, and it just seemed like there was no time to slow down. Because I didn't have experience or training in management, I was very task oriented with her. We would review her to dos and then I would check in on progress. Over time, she started to feel like more of a liability than an asset. And given the history of low performance, I was advised to put her on a PIP, a performance improvement plan. The PIP required that I get really specific with her goals and highlight milestones that she needed to hit along the way to remain employed. Interestingly enough, when I put her on the PIP, her work performance started to improve. When I asked her why, she said that the step by step instruction that the PIP provided really helped her. This wasn't ideal. In a startup environment, I really needed somebody who could run forward two feet first and didn't require a lot of direction from me. It felt like I had to micromanage, and that wasn't ideal for either of us. A couple of months later, she submitted her resignation. No one was surprised, and it might have been the best decision for everyone, including her. But admittedly, I was not skilled or equipped enough as a new manager to help recover the trust and motivation that had been lost. And my task oriented approach just didn't help the situation. Losing her as an employee wasn't pleasant, and that experience really led me to reflect. She was one of the newest people that I was managing, and she had left shortly after I took over. So I started to ask myself, did I do everything I could to get the best out of her? And the answer was no. I was operating as a transactional leader instead of a transformational leader. To truly get the most out of your team, today's research shows that leaning into strategies of a transformational leader is the way to go. If you haven't had the experience or the opportunity to expose yourself to this latest model of what effective leadership should look like, I'm going to give you the cliff notes today. I'll talk to you about the difference between transactional and transformational leadership, why transformational leadership is taught at many of the world's top business schools today, and what the four components of transformational leadership are, so you can lean into these to get more out of your team and feel better about yourself as a leader. So let's start first with transactional leadership, because this is the model that we see most often in corporate settings. Now, this is based on a system of exchanges between the leader and each employee. Employees receive positive reinforcement for meeting specific goals. You created 20 widgets this week. Great job. You were able to get that project over the finish line by our deadline. Great job. In this model, team members are typically evaluated and given feedback based on predetermined performance criteria. However, with this approach, workers aren't necessarily expected to think innovatively about the tasks at hand, because that type of dialogue to encourage that greater level of strategic thinking typically doesn't happen with transactional leadership. With transformational leadership, this is a style that inspires employees in ways that go beyond exchanges and rewards. It includes an individualized approach to each direct report that gets the most out of each one. Your style is catered to someone else's needs. Also, within the transformational leadership model, there's time to positively reinforce behavior that isn't just specific to performance review time. It happens in everyday interactions. So you don't just swoop in every 6 months or every 12 months, share what's working and what isn't, and then back to task orientation. The reason why transformational leadership is taught at many of the best management programs around the world today, including MIT, London Business School, and Harvard, is because it's a style of leadership that caters to the basic tenets of human motivation. Now, let me tell you more about that. If you are a history geek like me, you'll appreciate knowing a little bit more about where this comes from. This transformational leadership style was actually first observed back in the 70s by a biographer named James Burns. Now, he was studying political leaders at the time, and he pulled out these traits as the ones that were most effective for political leaders. Wow, if I had been a fly on the wall when he was observing these political leaders, how interesting that would have been. But the gift that we all get from that is this new theory that's been advanced by many psychologists since. In 2018, this style of leadership was statistically tested to measure results. And if you want to really geek out, this was published in Frontiers in Psychology. That study found that leaders who modeled transformational leadership saw a significant increase in employee job satisfaction, an increase in organizational commitment, and an increase in proactive behavior. In short, when you model transformational leadership, you'll see less turnover, higher commitment, and greater initiative from your employees. And how wonderful would that be to help you move the needle and also get back some free time so that you can start focusing on projects and development that's really going to move the needle for you. Okay, so this approach works, but what exactly does a manager need to do to embody the transformational leadership style? Well, there are 4 components to this leadership style. And I'll tell you what, when I was reading about this, some of the descriptions were quite confusing. So I've tried to boil this down and make this as simple as possible as you're listening. So the very first component is idealized influence. The second one is individualized consideration. The third one is intellectual stimulation. And the fourth is inspirational motivation. There are a lot of I's there. So let's break this down. Number 1, idealized influence. If I were to sum this up, this is basically how you show up for those you influence. So this is the foundation of how you react to your everyday situations. The idealized influence component describes leaders who model ethical behavior. This means they make values-based decisions that consider the needs of the entire organization, not just their own. They're also mission-focused, so they're really focused on the greater good. They are the first to take responsibility when things go wrong, and this really leads them to foster a climate of trust and motivation among the team. Basically, they're saying, hey, we're all in this together. When things go right, I'll give you credit. And when things go wrong, I'll take the fall. This is how they build a really, really loyal team. So that's the very first one. Now, if you're thinking about how you can apply this yourself, just think about the model that you portray when push comes to shove. There can be many, many reasons why we get backed into a corner and we show up in ways that we don't always agree with later. But if you keep this at the forefront of your mind, where giving your team the credit when things go well and taking the fall when things go poorly, this is really what you're going for here, because this is going to help you show up as a very motivating leader. The second one is inspirational motivation. If I were to sum this up, this is how you motivate. Transformational leaders focus on inspiring people by inherently believing in their abilities. In short, they lean into trust and set the tone that their people can do anything they set their minds to. Now, if you're a parent and you've read any parenting books, this approach may sound familiar, as the most effective way to motivate humans is rooted in the philosophy of trust and positive reinforcement. So there's a lot of parallels to how we motivate humans, whether they're little or they're older. This belief in your team and in individuals on your team is going to show up in the way that you communicate. It's going to show up in your body language. It's going to show up in your emails. So if you come to your team with the foundation of trust, it's going to be motivating for them. If you come to your team with a foundation that you don't believe in them, you don't believe they can get the work done, and they're not the right people for the job, they're going to sense that. They're going to pick that up on your nonverbal cues. This belief really increases the dedication and the commitment from each individual on the team. Think about that teacher that you had growing up who believed in you, and because they believed so much in you, you wanted to do well for them. That's what we're going for here. There's also a piece of to clarity and communication to this component. Transformational leaders are able to articulate a unified vision that encourages team members to exceed expectations. They understand that the most motivated employees are the ones who have a strong sense of purpose. When you're really living into transformational leadership, you're not afraid to challenge employees. That's an important part of it because you've created a culture of trust where you can pressure test and make sure the best ideas win. Of course, you're pressure testing in a respectful way. It's also important to remain optimistic about future goals and being really skilled at giving meaning to tasks at hand. So, as you're delegating or asking team members to take things on, tell them the why behind it and how this ladders up to their professional goals or the larger organizational goals. So, if you're thinking about how to apply this to your broader team, here's a good way to think about it. So, companies often have mission statements. It sounds like some variation of we create products that make the lives of busy professionals easier, right? Copy paste this to any pharma company or consumer goods company. That's the company mission. That's not what you're continuing to share with your team as you rally them. That's an input into your vision, but it's not the mission. It's your team vision. So an example of this could be our team operates with the core belief that everyone on our team is skilled and capable of doing their job well, and we support each other to win together. This team vision should be widely known. It should be communicated by the leader often, and it should be supported in every action the team takes. If a team member shows up in a way that goes against this team vision, there should be consequences and conversations to help make sure that the team is aligned in really supporting the team vision. This is an important part of creating a microculture that's going to thrive. The third one is intellectual stimulation. So, the way that I would sum this up is how you contribute in team conversations as the leader. Transformational leaders regularly challenge assumptions. They take risks and they solicit team members' input and ideas. If there is an idea that you see often when working with teams let me back up. There is an idea when I work with teams that if we challenge another teammate on their idea, it's going to hurt their feelings, or it's going to damage the relationship, or they're going to think less of me because I called them out. When trust is intact and the team has the right framework to challenge ideas, meaning they know what the words are and the approach that's appropriate to challenge ideas in a positive, constructive way, this is when your team's ideas are going to go from good to great. Now, another important component of intellectual stimulation is avoid excessive fear of failure. Now, there are a lot of people who are led by fear versus motivated by new ideas and innovation. The goal here is to really focus on the opportunity and don't get sidetracked by the fear. Instead, Foster an environment where it's safe to have conversations, be creative, and voice diverse perspectives. When you create this environment, it's important that you, as the leader, don't criticize thoughts or opinions of team members. Anytime you prematurely shut down ideas, you create a climate of distrust and hurt, and you also put yourself in the middle of the spoke of the wheel, meaning people can't have innovative ideas or think by themselves without running it by you. So you want to be really careful about creating a climate where people feel empowered to think, because this is how you get them to take more initiative. Instead, think about asking questions to enable your team to practice a greater level of autonomy and ultimately determine more effective ways to execute their tasks. They don't need to come to you to figure everything out. This helps them really gain confidence with that problem solving skill by themselves. The fourth component to transformational leadership is individual consideration. I sum this up as how well you demonstrate how well you know your team. Transformational leaders listen to employees' concerns and needs so they can provide adequate support. So this isn't a leader who's trying to talk over everybody. This is a leader who slows down and takes the time to really listen to their employees. They operate from the understanding that what motivates one person may not motivate someone else. As a result, they're able to adapt their management style to accommodate various individuals on the team. The main skills that shine here include listening, understanding, and everything under the umbrella of emotional intelligence. Individual consideration is degree to which a leader attends to each follower's personal needs or each team member's personal needs. Transformational leadership encourages members by focusing on the way each person affects the overall goal. One great way that I help leaders understand the team better is through a DISC assessment. So a lot of people have taken this assessment and it's very widely used in the business world. But a simple assessment like this, MBTI, Strength Finders, this just helps you know your team at a more innate level, kind of looking under the hood of the car, if you will, to understand what their unique motivations and interests are so you can appeal to that as you're motivating them. This understanding and knowing and seeing your individual team members and speaking to their preferred approach allows them to really grow and learn in an environment that they feel comfortable in. By leveraging transformational leadership, you start to foster a culture where team members take initiative and they're proactive in solving problems. This starts to get more things off your plate and enables you to be more strategic and ensure the things that you're adding to your plate are really those items that are going to set you up for success moving forward, aka let's get you out of the weeds. This is also another way to increase your happiness as a leader. I'm Executive Coach Amy Sanchez, and thanks for watching this video. If you liked what you heard, liked what you saw, you can learn more by visiting my website, swim-against.com, where you're going to find more topics like this and others that will enable you to become or remain a happy and successful leader. Take care of yourself.